The state attorney's office in Hillsborough County created the first juvenile mental health court in the state of Florida, started it in 2019. This experiment was in response to a growing number of repeat offenders in the system with untreated serious mental illness. And Lisa, tell us about how the program is working so far.
Well, we have a 97% success rate, which is just extraordinary. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, these are young people that we have the opportunity to work with, and there's a lot of support around that. You're going to see a theme, if you're not already seeing it, that collaboration is really, really important, and we are very fortunate in Hillsborough County to have a very collaborative environment in which to work. Judges that are 100% behind this, state attorney, public defender, all the agencies that provide services and involving families. It's so important, as Jamie said, that you know we're not only dealing with the client, and in our scenario, you're talking about mostly children that are teenagers.
Okay.
60% of our clients range from 15 to 17 years old.
Okay.
And it's very important to involve the family in the therapy that is provided through the system.
When we talk about prevalence, give our viewers a sense of how many kids are involved in the court.
So we began juvenile mental health court in 2018, and since then we've served about 500 children.
And what is the trigger for them to be part of the program?
Sometimes it's a parent.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a lawyer. One of the assistant public defenders will recognize that there's something going on with this child. And you know, depending on what the issue is, juvenile mental health court is divided into two sections. There's the incompetent to proceed children, and then the children that get to engage in the contracts that allow for their cases to be dismissed when they successfully complete all the conditions.
What type of mental illness are we talking about in the majority or predominantly in this group of juveniles?
That's an interesting question because, you know, children are different when it comes to the diagnosis because there's so much brain development that's ongoing up until your early 20s. And so there's not as much of this kind of solid diagnoses that you see with adults, but we see a lot of autism. We see a lot of major depressive disorder, a lot of anxiety. There's like attachment disorder, OCD, these kinds of things that are leading children into the criminal justice system that parents are reaching out and they want help.
When your office is looking at these cases, do you find that there are many instances where the child has an undiagnosed mental health, like bipolar, for example, that's not been diagnosed? So you're the first gate that says, maybe we should look at this.
Yeah, the public defender's office is very much on the front lines of being, you know, the agency, the person, the human that's identifying those issues with both the children and the adults. And that comes from, you know, we provide a tremendous amount of training to our lawyers to be able to recognize those issues, because it's very important for us to be successful in the work that we do. And in order to do that, you've got to address the whole person. We take a very holistic approach to the work that we do.
You all are focused on diversion instead of punishment.
Correct.
Explain to our viewers how you are seeing that work in the life of most of the kids that you're working with.
Well, I mean, I think it's important to also recognize that there is accountability in these programs. You know, there is even with our adult mental health and drug court, and there seems to be this kind of perception in the community that this is a way out, a way to get your charges dismissed. And the reality is that this work that clients do in these programs is strenuous. They have to report to court a whole lot more than they might otherwise have to do. I mean, you can sometimes go into court on one court date and resolve your case. And these are children that are having to go back to court over and over and over again. But that's how you build a rapport. That's how you know, I have a success story for you, and I'll just call him Stephen.
Okay.
Stephen was a foster care child that was adopted at the age of 9, and those parents may not have been ideal, and sometimes that happens. For example, the dad in that family wanted Stephen to refer to him as Mr. Jones, not even dad, you know, and so he already had some significant trauma, and now he's got attachment issues, and when he got into trouble, he just really couldn't talk to anybody about what was going on. And our office in particular, I mean, my lawyers in this division are just great, and they care so much about the work that they do, and they just continue to work with him, whether it was in person or in Zoom, on Zoom, and meet with him over and over again, to the point where he ultimately said, "You're the first people that have ever been proud of the work that I've done." He was able to, he graduated successfully from the program, got a driver's license, bought a car, has steady employment, stays in contact with his lawyers after the fact, even came back to visit juvenile mental health court as a success story and talk to the kids in the program.
Wow, it's really, it's so wonderful to see that the hard work, these difficult conversations, they do pay off and they do work in the long run.
Absolutely.